All right, so back to the texture collage. So your first task is to brainstorm some ideas about what you might want to use for your subject. So it could be anything that is relatable to you in your life. So most people know that, well, I like Vans. I have about 7 pairs, so that's what I chose, but I also made a list. Right, so my brainstorm list included Vans, Adidas, cupcakes, presents, snow, candy canes, flowers. So I didn't even finish. So I have a lot to choose from. All right, so once you decide your image, you may want to print out some reference material if you have access to a printer. So I printed this out for this. I also did another example of a still life. All right, and I printed this out. Now my idea was that I was just going to trace, but I ended up just freehand drawing it. All right, so you may want to print out reference material for you to use for your drawing. All right, so I'm going to do started two examples. Okay, one of those is I'm going to do, I can't really see it. Oh, there we go. I'm going to do Adidas because that's my second favorite brand. And then I also thought I would try a Christmas theme. And so I printed out two things I used for reference. For Adidas, I printed this out. And the only reason I did it this big was because I just wanted to trace it. But if you don't have access to a printer, that's okay, because you're just going to freehand draw it anyways on your paper. Okay, here's my other reference that I chose for my presents. I was going to do some presents. All right, so once you have your idea and if needed, a reference photo, you're going to draw it on a piece of copy paper. Okay, your drawing is going to be on the piece of copy paper. So this is just the lighter paper in your supplies. Okay, so as you can see, I didn't copy exactly this. I just drew what I wanted to. Now this is my composition. All right, you could also just freehand draw. Right, so I was thinking about flowers. So I drew a vase and kind of a rough sketch of some flowers because they're going to be totally free form. All right. So once I have my drawing done on my paper, all right, it's time to think about textures and materials that you might use in your collage. Okay, so I guess we'll back up a little bit. Collage is when you use a variety of materials to cut and glue onto a base to create the artwork, right? So I used paper, I used a sticker, I used some tissue paper, right? But I created these textures that I used by going around and using a rub technique to create the papers that I use to cut and glue. All right, so let's see. I'm going to be probably pausing the video and kind of moving on. But one thing that I did for this, right, is I rubbed the bottom of my shoe, my Vans, with a white crayon, and then I did a black watercolor wash. Right before that, I went around my house and I looked for lots of different textures. Now, I don't recommend you doing this because you go through a lot of paper unless you know what you want. So here, this was a bamboo screen. This was a basket. This was the edge of a like a mesh cup. All right, I found some random coins. So it's kind of fun to find different textures to rub with your crayons around the house. Now, other thing that looked pretty cool that was going to inspire my flower was the leaves. So I found those different things around my house to rub with the crayon. All right. So once I have my drawings, I'm going to work on 2 with you, but you're only doing 1. Because I wanted to show a variety. I have my drawings, and I did my drawing of my Adidas. Look at that. Okay, so I have, it's hard to see that. I did my Adidas. Is going to be one I'm going to work on, and the other is the presents. Okay. The next step is your backgrounds. So let me pause this and then we'll get my background papers ready. So I have prepared my backgrounds, but they're drying right now. So the next step is to think about textures or papers that you want to make for parts of your collage. So if you remember, I had on the Vans collage, I wanted to use parts of my Vans shoes. So I went in, I did a rub with white crayon on the bottom of the shoe, and then I did a black watercolor wash over it. For the letters, I actually just used the white paper. This is all copy paper, not drawing paper. And I just rubbed a black crayon over a box lid. So I got that corrugated pattern. And that was the 2 patterns that I used here, the box, and then in the background, you can kind of see, I also rubbed the bottom of the shoe with the red crayon and then did a watercolor wash. These were all separate papers that I made before I started my collage. On the background here, I just painted the bottom of my shoe and pressed it down on the pattern, on the background. Remember, the background paper that you're going to use is drawing paper. So now you're using your thick 9x12 drawing paper, and that's going to be the basis for your background. All right, so once I have my background planned out, mine will be dry here soon. I need to prep my sketches so that I could use them for tracing shapes that I can cut out. So what we're doing is a graphite transfer. And most of the time it worked. Sometimes you could see I had to go back and add a little extra darker crayon and some pink crayon. But what you're going to do is you're going to take the side of your pencil And just where your images are, you're going to do a graphite layer. So I'm just using the side of my pencil, and I'm going to cover this whole area where my image is with graphite. Okay, so this technique is called the graphite transfer. And it's not necessary to do this. Remember, I'm working on 2 images. I'm going to do my presents, and then I'm going to do Adidas. Though, if you're just going to do something freeform, like as if I was going to work with this piece, and I knew I wanted a vase, and then I was just going to freeform the flowers, I could just cut shapes and collage them onto my background. But since I want these precise shapes, I need some method to trace or transfer these so that I can cut them out. So that's why I'm doing a graphite transfer. It's not required. Now, if you have access to any other kind of pencil, like a 6B or a drawing pencil or an ebony pencil, that's what I did this one with, and I recommend that because sometimes the regular pencil is not enough, but it works. So the other thing that you want to think about as far as you have your background, right? What are you going to do for your background? Because you want to prep that before you start gluing anything on, right? So I knew I wanted to do these prints. So on this background, I painted my shoe and I pressed them onto the background. Now, once your background is thought out, you want to start thinking about your textures or the pieces that you're going to use to cut out your other shapes on your design. And just a little tip on rubbing surfaces. Right, so here's my shoe. Shoes have a lot of great textures on them, the bottoms of shoes. So you might go through your closet and find different shoes have fun little bottoms, different prints or things on the bottom. I don't have that one. All right, so what I'd like to do is, first of all, I'm using that copy paper, not drawing paper because it's a lighter weight. I'm using the back of the crayon or the bottom of the crayon. Now, if you wanted to, you could break a piece off, but I think so I like to keep the crayons whole unless I have a box of junker crayons. If you have junker crayons, then you can use the side, which works really easy. But if you don't want to break your crayons or you don't want to mess these up, you just take the bottom, and that gives you a nice flat coloring surface, and you can just rub along any surface, and then right, you get whatever texture that is coming up. Now, my Adidas, these design, I've already kind of thought through the papers that I want to use, the colors that I want to use. And so obviously this is my Adidas shoe. I'm going to use the bottom of my Adidas shoe. But I also kind of went around and I looked for other ideas. And so I found a piece of a map, right? For my presents, I found some wrapping paper. You might look through if you have any scrapbooking materials at your house, different textures of paper. Let's see, what else did I look for? Wrapping paper, ribbons. You can see on my Vans, I found some stickers. But I started out with a plan that I knew. I started creating the papers that I wanted for the letters and shapes in my design. All right, so far we have graphite transfer. First of all, we did our contour, simple contour line drawing. All right, and then now I've created my backgrounds. They're drying. I'm going to get them out here in a minute. And I've also went around and looked for different and created different base papers that I could use for starting my collage. I also use this, right? Again, just taking the side of the crayon and just using or the bottom of the crayon, right? It can give you pretty much a texture on anything. So there's another idea. Try it. There's lots of stuff out there that's going to create different textures. All right, so this is my background for my present collage. And so I painted, I just did a light watercolor wash, and then I did a rubbing here of the side of a basket. So this is, the idea is that this is the wall and this is the table. I'm going to put my drawing on, and I'm going to kind of center it because my copy paper is smaller than my drawing paper. So I'm going to center it where I like it, and then I'm just going to tape it on. Now, if you don't have blue tape, you could use masking tape, but you want to kind of keep this on, and you don't want to tape too much. You just need to make a little hinge. Okay, so you can see here how I did that on the still life. So I'm going to do that here on this present picture. And then I'm doing a little something different, but I'm just going to, because remember I did my graphite transfer. All right, I want to, using a ballpoint pen, I'm going to draw the lines of my basic shapes, going over it with a ballpoint pen, and it should be transferring to your background sheet. And the purpose for this initial tracing is that it's going to give you an idea of where you're going to put your glue your papers. Now again, if you're doing a real free form collage, you wouldn't need to do this, right? It's if you have those, if your idea determines where is important, where things go, and the shape of things, like in the Vans logo, right? I needed to know on my back, well, actually, I needed to know on this initial piece where all that lettering went. So I didn't have to just, guess. Okay, so I'm going to go with my ballpoint pen. I'm transferring so I get the shapes marked out on my background where they're going. I'm going to glue my paper for my collage. All right, so that is the basics. I don't have a lot of detail, but now I know I can see on my background sheet where those shapes are going to go. Oh, here's my background for my Adidas logo. I did my graphite transfer, and now I'm going to take a ballpoint pen, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw. I'm going to trace through the letters so that I know where to put these letters when I cut them out of their other papers. So let's see. Yep, it's coming through barely. All right, so I'm going to do that to this, and then we'll talk about getting started with cutting and gluing on your shapes. All right, so I have my tracing. I've traced through to the other side. This is my background sheet, and it's a little hard to see, but I do know where I'm going to glue on my shapes. So I'm ready to start cutting, or I'm ready to start tracing those shapes. And I've already prepared my paper. I have a plan. So I like this matte background. I'm going to do 3 stripes like this, but that'll come last. So usually you want to do your largest shapes, your shapes that are in the background first. So for example, on my still life, I cut out this shape first, then this, and I started layering them on and gluing them on the paper. For the vans, I did the same. I did this piece first. I cut that out and I glued it on, and then I worked my way up to the smallest pieces. So I think I did this, then these. All right, so for this, and because you don't need to watch a whole demonstration on me doing this whole thing, I'll just show you how I'm going to get started with the letters here. Now, normally I would do these. I probably would start with these, but I'm waiting for my paper to dry. This is a piece, this is my shoe that I did green crayon, and then I did a yellow watercolor wash. All right, so the purpose, this is the good stuff here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, this is going to be my letters. I created this paper for my letters. I did crayon rubbing on the that can, and then I did an orange wash. You can see that I'm trying to incorporate a lot of the colors that are in this map. That was sort of my jumping off point. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set this paper where I want to trace. And for me, it's important that the lines are straight. So I'm just going to make sure that they're straight. Okay, and now you see how this is taped, right? I might want to also put I'm going to tape this here because I'm going to trace all of these Adidas letters. All right, so again, you might get a different color ballpoint pen, right? So you know where you trace. So I'm going to go around each of my letters. All right, let's make sure they're working. Ooh, it's real light. So sometimes if it gets a little bit light, you might go back in either with some more pencil. The other thing that you can do, oh, this is what I should have shared with you first, is put some paper underneath, and that creates a little bit of a cushion so that you can, there's more to press into to transfer the design. Okay, so I'm going to pause and then do this. All right, so I've traced the letters, and you can see barely showing up. They're right here, and now I'm going to cut them out. You should be able to just use scissors. If you do have an X-Acto knife, that would be helpful for any kind of internal shapes, but if you don't, that's not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my letters. head. Fucking. I have my letters glued on, and basically I would just keep going with the same process. So I'm not going to go through all that in this video because everybody's going to be a little bit different. But like I said, I planned my papers, and so the next sections I would work on would be the flower part of the Adidas logo, and I would do the same thing. Put my paper underneath, trace with the ballpoint pen. Again, put a piece of newspaper under so you have a little cushion. Cut it out, glue it on. Once you're finished and you have all your parts glued on, think about what else you can do. So, for example, on these Vans, I went around, everything was glued on. I went around and outlined my letters with the black Sharpie. I found this random stuff in a Vans box that I had. I kind of glued that on. I found a sticker. I glued that on. So I just kind of added some variety of different associated textures, and that's why it's called a collage, because you are taking different parts and putting them together to create one piece of artwork. So a quick review on the process. So the first thing you're going to do in your sketchbook is brainstorm a list of words or ideas that you could use for your theme. So I had my sketchbook, and I just did it right here in the line section. Not right there, right here. Right, so what did I put? I put Vans, Adidas, cupcakes, a brainstorm a list. So I have some backups in case what I start doesn't work. All right. Once I knew my idea, all right, the second step was to draw a simple drawing. Okay, if you need to trace or if you're going to freeform it, all right, either one, I do a simple contour line drawing of my idea. Third, I prepare my backgrounds and my papers. So I got my drawing paper and I prepared my background. So here I did a random splatter. Okay, you look around before you start. Look around. You might get inspired by random textures, right? The old wrapping paper is popular, so I kind of thought about snow. I knew I kind of wanted to do presents, and I looked around. And I found this wrapping paper. You can use any kind of paper you want. You can make the paper like I did with the all my vans. Right here's the background for my presents. Still working on that. All right, so you prepare your background, and then now start to prepare your papers that you're going to use for your collage, or find them, right? Like the wrapping paper. All right, so I knew I wanted to rub my shoe, so I rubbed my shoe. I did a wash with the yellow paint on the green. So I prepared my papers. I prepared the paper for the letters. Okay, so background, prepare your papers. You're going to lightly tape your drawing to your background, and then you're going to use the transfer. You prepared your drawing with the transfer, graphite transfer, using your ballpoint pen. Draw around your shape so that that transfers to your background, and then you're ready to start drawing your shapes, cutting them out, and gluing them on. And it should just hopefully evolve, right? It'll evolve as you keep adding, and as you keep putting more, as you start to finish your piece, you might say, oh, wow, I like that. Or I think I need when I did my still life fruit, right? I went back and I added color pencil around the edges to sharpen things up. I added a little shading. I outlined it with color pencil. So there's definitely going to be that final finishing touch to your piece so that it looks cohesive and finished. All right, so that's the demo for the texture collage, and check in later to see how this turned out. All right, thanks.